Hi everyone, and in today's video we are going to be answering the question, should a UX designer learn how to code? And this is a community question. I got a comment from a person named Ahmet, same name, different person, and this was their question, and it's a very complicated question. So I actually thought to record a video because many of you might also want the answers to this question. You may want to create a edge in your career because let's admit it, UX design is a very tough career to break into. Now, the reason this question still creates controversy in the sector, I believe, is because we are lacking a clear terminology. There is basically two types of UX person right now who's working in companies, and the first one is called a UX engineer. If you are a UX engineer, you are usually getting a research from a UX researcher, and you are going to do mid fidelity wireframing, then high fidelity, and then you will be doing the front end development. So you are literally the bridge between the back end developer and the UX researcher. The second person is what we call a UX designer, who usually handles the research part, the low fidelity and high fidelity part, but doesn't touch the code. So what I'm assuming in this video is that you are a UX designer. You don't do much coding in the projects, and you are asking literally if you should learn to code to basically communicate with other developers better. Because at the end of the day, if you are a UX designer by definition, your hand won't be touching much code. You might want to become a UX engineer, and that's a different thing where you also want to develop, but that's a different career, and it's becoming more of a different career each year. Now, if you are enjoying the video so far and you want to see more of my videos so that you can become a better UI UX designer, please feel free to click on that subscribe button below. I would appreciate it. So if you are a UX designer, your goal for learning to program is to basically prove to your employer or manager that you can communicate enough. If a designer understands the fundamentals of front-end dev and the back-end, and let's say if you are working on mobile, let's say the mobile architecture, iOS, Swift, it helps a lot because a lot of the problems you will have will be about not having a clear understanding in terms of other person's constraints. For example, let's say you are working on a web project and you show your designs to the, let's say, front-end dev, and the front-end developer tells you, right now we are using jQuery, or let's say we are using Bootstrap, we have 12 grids, that is usually the most common to use. You propose something that is very hard, you just proposed 4. Can we make these 8, 12, or at least multiples of 4? If a UX designer doesn't understand fundamentals of the front-end development, they will be a bit confused, and they don't know if the, let's say, the developer is kind of tricking them. But if you have the fundamentals like I do, you actually know, and you also earn more trust because you are better at communicating your ideas. Now that we actually cleared the terminology, what is important is to identify our opportunity cost. If we learn how to code or program, we already established the benefit, which is that if you are a UX designer, you will communicate better with your project managers or other developers you are working with. That is the benefit, but what is the cost? Your cost of learning to code is an opportunity cost. As your time is valuable, the time you spend on learning how to code is not the time you could spend where you could actually get better in UI UX design, whether that is optimizing your design process or getting better at UI design or reading more books or taking more tutorials, and those add up a lot, which is why my advice actually depends on the two constraints, meaning what kind of a company you are working for, the size of the company matters a lot, and what is your background. Because if you want programming to be your unfair advantage when it comes to building your design career, you have to actually consider your opportunity cost and if you getting that skill will work for you depending on the employer you will work for. Why does the size of the company matter? That's a great question. Now, consider this. Let's say you are a UI UX designer working for a company that has over 5,000 employees. Usually when a company is that size, they will have their own design department or multiple departments where each UX designer's role is specific. One designer here will just do wireframing, the other one will only do high fidelity UI design. So the roles are very established, and what that does is there is usually not a lot of communication issues. Processes have been created. You are literally just doing your work in the design department. You are just doing one specific thing. When this happens, you will have a lot less touch with other people, and you knowing how to code will be less beneficial. In contrast, if you were to work at a startup of 10 people, you are probably going to be having a very high touch relationship with your users, with your project leader, the CEO. Everybody knows everybody and everybody is working together, and you are going to justify your decisions all the time because you're a small company and probably you don't have much funding. Every decision you make is very critical. That is why the company size matters when you are deciding on if you should learn to code or not, because importance of communication skills you will get with coding have less benefit the more the company size grows. For example, in my whole career, I worked with very small startups and 20 to 40 people, usually at most 100 people now. I can tell the smaller the company was that I worked with, the more important it was for me to make sure everybody was on the same page, whether that was with developers or with the managers. Now, it is also important to consider your background, which is what you bring onto the table when you are getting your first UI UX design job or building a career in design. Were you a project manager before, or are you coming from a graphic design background, or are you actually coming back from a software engineering background? So I knew my unfair advantage in UX design was knowing programming beforehand, which is why I tried to keep my skills sharp. So I knew my unfair advantage in UX design was knowing programming beforehand, which is why I try to keep my skills sharp, and I usually work for smaller companies that optimize my unfair advantages, right? So that I can actually communicate with a lot of people, be high touch, and gain the respect of the dev team because I understand their language. If you are coming from a product management, let's say, route, maybe it's a good idea for you to actually consider if you can improve on what you learned, right? Maybe you could become a UX manager if you were to go for a mid-level 500 people company. If you are coming from a graphics design background, consider becoming a UI designer, or just stay in the UI UX and go for a mid-level company again where there's a lot more established hierarchy in terms of design and development. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching this video, and if you really like this video and you would like to learn more about how to get better opportunities in your UX design career, please feel free to click on that subscribe button below so we can stay in touch and you can get notifications when my next video comes.